Hi, everyone. I'm Shana Lebowitz Gaynor. I'm a correspondent for Business Insider, and I'm here today with Rachel Carlson, co-founder and CEO at Guild Education, which is an ed tech unicorn, and their mission is to unlock opportunity for America's workforce through education. So, Rachel, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Great. So we've got a lot of questions for you today. I think we would want to start by hearing a little bit more about what Guild does. This is a hugely ambitious mission. How are you and your team going about achieving this?
Sure. So as you mentioned, our mission is to unlock economic opportunity for America's workforce through education and upskilling. And we found that one of the most powerful paths to pursuing that goal is in partnership with the largest employers in America. When you look at the 88 million Americans who need what we do today at Guild, and candidly, that number is only growing amidst COVID. We know that one of the biggest problems that holds back the employees who need upskilling and education from finding the right schools and the programs that'll help them future-proof and get prepared for the future of work. One of the great barriers there is this crazy digital acquisition game whereby higher education has to compete on Google and Facebook ads to meet students. And so we found that by partnering with employers and helping employers play a voice in helping their employees understand what are the best schools that are really designed for working adults. These aren't the schools you watch on Saturday or a normal Saturday on college football. They're often schools that have tremendous outcomes specifically for working adults and have focused there. And we found that when we partner with employers and bring the best nonprofit and private, nonprofit, and public universities to the table, we can work with employers and students to pair that all together and really advance the number of working adults in the U.S. who have access and funding streams to go back to school at a high quality, low cost institution.
That sounds terrific. And I know you mentioned that the number of partners you work with is only growing during COVID. To name some of your current clients, Walmart, Lowe's, Disney, Chipotle. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what these corporate clients are facing in terms of challenges during the current pandemic recession.
Sure. So, we've really seen a tale of two labor markets since the pandemic took force in March. On one side, there are so many companies, and we're reading about these every day, that are faced with unprecedented change and economic pressures that have led to laying off significant amounts of talent. On the other side, there are employers that are still grappling with these huge talent needs and skills gaps and are actively working to attract and upskill their workforce. And in some cases, that dynamic is present within the same company, where they are having to lay off on one side and rapidly hire on another part of their business. And so, what we've been thinking a lot about is how do you partner with companies through stages of workforce transformation, especially accelerated workforce transformation like what we're seeing. And so we've spent some time this summer thinking about solutions where Guild can partner with companies in terms of their hiring and then also in terms of their displacement and supporting those displaced workers so that they can get back on their feet and future-proof their careers.
And to talk a little bit more about connecting displaced workers with resources for career development and employment. I believe one initiative you launched recently is called Next Chapter. I think it would be great for you to tell us a little bit about Next Chapter, and then also what the reaction from employers has been with the rolling out of the Next Chapter initiative.
Sure. So, for us, we've always thought about education as a really powerful tool for corporations to attract and retain and upskill their talent, but now it's playing a more strategic purpose in this climate. Given the acceleration of automation and AI and what we see business process automation that is really infiltrating blue collar and frontline workforce jobs, employers are worried that some of their frontline workers' skill sets are going to become obsolete or unnecessary given the technology that's now emerging and going to roll out over the next 5 and 10 years. So rather than, trying to put displaced workers into more of those high risk jobs or let them languish in them until they lose them, we've really been thinking about how to upskill workers into the in-demand and higher wage jobs that we know are more future-proof, like skilled trades and IT and allied healthcare roles. To your question, the response from employers has been positive because they understand that our work can't simply be about returning to normal. The world we were in February probably isn't coming back. And this isn't just the pandemic. The pandemic is one of many things that is accelerating this automation agenda. And so for both businesses and their employees, there has to be a new conversation about what this is going to look like in a really accelerated economy and what we do to help workers who are going to be negatively impacted.
So it sounds like it's sort of a win-win for employers and employees. Employees, of course, get the knowledge and tools to get these in-demand jobs, and then employers, it sounds like, are able to arm themselves with that workforce for the digital transformation that's already underway. Is that right?
Yeah, it's exactly right. And think of it as a labor market. So in some cases, an employee is reskilling for a job within their same company. In others, they are upskilling and moving from one company that no longer is going to be able to employ either in mass or specifically that type of job and skill role. And we're seeing that in all, many, many pockets of the economy, and helping that worker go move on to their next company, and really thinking of education as a part of that severance package that comes when workers have to be laid off because of those transformations tied either to economic crisis or to automation.
That does make a lot of sense. And so we've spoken a little bit now about next chapter. Another development in the Guild world is that you relatively recently acquired Entangled, which I believe was one of your investors at Guild. So why did you choose to make this acquisition? What was the thinking behind that?
Yeah. So even before the pandemic and the conversations for the acquisition certainly predated that, it was clear that the world's largest companies were asking us to develop education solutions beyond what we had already done that would create pathways for economic mobility for their workforce. And they were asking us to think big about harnessing the potential that innovative academic institutions and the kinds of programs Guild had built, what they could do to upskill and reskill employees. And some of the biggest concerns we heard from employers had tied to this concept of ethical offboarding. Even though no one knew the pandemic was coming, there was a pretty clear sense that 10 years into that bull market, we were going to have a recession sometime in the near horizon. And companies were thinking about, as they implemented technologies, what were they going to do? We also at Guild really think of ourselves as a solutions organization, but we hadn't yet had the teams and capabilities to really robustly build out the consulting and solution orientation that both our employers and our academic institutions were asking for. And so with Entangled, and for people who don't know, Entangled was this amazing, multifaceted organization that had both consulting and solutions practice. They had a product team that was working on some of the things I'll mention in a second related to workforce transformation. And then they were investors, which is why they were Guild investors. So it's a little bit full circle for us. But the solutions orientation as well as the products they were developing were both really core in Guild's roadmap. And so when I started spending time on this topic with Paul, who's been a mentor of mine for many years predating Guild and an investor since day one in Guild, it became pretty clear that there was a 1 + 1 = 3 equation here if we joined forces.
That's terrific. And it sounds like you and the team at Guild were pretty forward thinking. You anticipated maybe there would be a market downturn, an economic downturn. And now there is, perhaps for reasons none of us could have predicted. But I wonder if there are specific challenges that you at Guild, or you and the Guild team overall, have been facing during the pandemic, and how you've managed to handle those obstacles.
Yeah. You're right that we had, one of the benefits of working with large companies is that they tend to be pretty good, better than just about anyone without a crystal ball, at kind of seeing what's coming down the pike. So we did have an inkling that getting prepared for a recessionary environment was what we were going to need to do to support our students. And that served us really well. I would say where we've struggled most, we're a growing organization. We've gone from about 400 employees at the start of the year to over 750. Only the small group that onboarded in January and February ever got to step foot in our offices, and nearly 250 of those folks, including the whole Entangled team, have never been to a Guild office. The challenges of that, all of asking a team to undergo significant change, is really hard. I think work from home is a really sustainable way to do what you've done before, but it has been really trying for our team to do new things and different things and join a new company and get to know one another. And so we have worked incredibly hard and have work to do on supporting the team remotely, creatively finding ways to connect virtually, and really just continuing to ensure that our employees are doing okay during a really difficult time for everyone we support. And then that extends to our students, obviously. I think our students are from all corners of the United States. The majority of our students are parents, like many of our employees, and come from often economically disadvantaged communities that are suffering even more in this pandemic than average pockets of our communities. And so the challenges have been great, and we are spending an enormous amount of time trying to figure out how to do our best.
It's wonderful that you're paying so much attention to that, and it seems like the attention that you pay now to students and employees who say are parents won't just pay off during the pandemic, but it'll pay off, post-pandemic when we get there, because you'll have already thought through some of the challenges that, say, working parents are facing.
I hope that's the case. Having become a working parent on my Guild journey, I had twin girls 2.5 years ago. Every parent says this, it's such a life-changing experience, but it really does change your lens on life. And I do think that myself and many of our other parents, as well as our empathetic folks on our team who aren't parents, have been able to approach a lens on both supporting our students and supporting our employees during this difficult time. But I don't want to understate that parents are the only caregivers. I think so many of us and so many folks with or without kids are playing new caregiving roles, whether that's caring for their partners, helping folks. I think there's a mental health crisis going on in America right now. And I think that people are needing to care for one another in different ways and taking care of elderly parents and family members. And there's a lot of caregiving happening right now. And so we've tried to apply our lens and some of the things we've always cared about with Guild, both to our employees and to our students during this incredibly challenging time.
Well, that sounds like a lot of really fabulous thoughtfulness and initiatives that have been coming out. I would really like to hear a little bit about your entrepreneurial career, Rachel. I want to make sure I get the name of this right. You yesterday were named ASU GSV's Power of Women honoree, which is, a huge accomplishment. And I think it would be great for you to tell us a little bit about how your experience as a female founder has influenced your career and entrepreneurial trajectory and Guild's trajectory to date.
Sure. It's always a hard question for me to answer because I want to be thoughtful to never proliferate generalizations about what being a member of one particular demographic group means. But for me in particular, I think that being a female in leadership and having the real privilege of working with a number of other female leaders, our leadership team is majority female, has allowed us to be increasingly empathetic and thoughtful about the needs of all of our students. Now, that starts with the fact that the majority of our students are women. Right now, more than 50% of folks in higher ed are female. For us, that number is higher than 60% because we work with working adults. And as mentioned already, the majority of them are parents. But I think anytime you belong to a group that's classified as other, And candidly, in most of my life, I wasn't. When I was in college and grad school, I wasn't. Women were about 50-50, business school maybe 60-40. But in entrepreneurship, as you mentioned, the female leaders are still unfortunately quite rare. And so anytime you have the opportunity to look at the world as an other, or in a minority group, relative to the majority, I think it gives a perspective to build empathy and to think differently and think outside the box, because you're by definition not in the box. And so that has served me well. But I also think that we've been having lots of important conversations at Guild about the fact that there's both intersectionality to topics like gender and race and ethnicity, and also that simply because we are at pretty impressive gender parity, we still have work to do on racial and ethnic diversity at Guild and other causes of seen and unseen diversity that we want to expand on. So it's something I'm thinking a lot about this summer and aiming to be thoughtful about where I can bring my experience, but also where I have room to learn and to think more about how do we serve diversity of all types at Guild.
Well, I think your point about the benefits of being, so to speak, outside the box and the new ideas and innovations you can come up with because you're not in the quote unquote mainstream group. I think that's a really, really interesting point. And I love that you said that you're thinking more about different types of diversity at Guild. Just to get back a little bit to the idea of female founders and entrepreneurs, what is your best advice for current or aspiring female entrepreneurs who maybe have encountered some bias from, the entrepreneurial community?
Sure. I think it starts with finding investors who are aligned with your values. I don't believe your investors have to, from a mirror perspective, mirror you. And in fact, that could be quite limiting if that was the criteria, given the small number of female investors and people of color right now who are investing, though those numbers are both growing and we're thrilled by that. But I think you can start by finding, firms and individuals in particular in the investment community who share the values of you, the leader, and you, the company. So that's always been the most useful. And at Guild, for us, that starts with this idea that talent is widely distributed throughout the world and opportunity is not. And when we find investors who share that thesis, who believe that not everyone hit a triple, but in fact, many people are born on third base and can kind of think about the world that way, then we often find that we can find the right partners who both want to scale our business and scale our mission. And that's really important at Guild. And our first core value is that, we're scaling the business for students. And when we serve students well, the business scales.
I really like your point about finding investors who align with your mission and your vision, and thinking about that point, and also your point about serving students as a way to serve your business and a way to grow the business. That just makes a lot of sense when you articulate it like that. I also wanted to ask a little, I bet this is a tough question, but we've talked so much about all the different programs and developments at Guild. What for you as the founder and as co-founder and CEO has been most rewarding in your journey at Guild?
Yeah, it's absolutely when we get to hear about the accomplishments of our students and then we get to track those and then see them arrive at their opportunity. There's other individual milestones we've hit that we're quite proud of, but it really comes down to those student moments. And we have an amazing team who helps us learn more about our students as they progress and track their graduations. And from time to time, we've gotten to celebrate with our students. Before the pandemic, we had a tradition where when anyone won a Guild Core Value Award, they were able to go spend time and get to know some of our students in person. And so now we're doing that all virtually. But as an anecdote, it makes me think about a student we were recently talking about who had been working at Chipotle for 6 years, had started as a crew member and had worked her way up to general manager, which is a very prestigious role within the company, overseeing a $2 million P&L in a restaurant of her own. But earning her degree is what put her down that path, and she did it to inspire her son and to set a new precedent in their family about college achievement. And she said something to the effect of, I know this degree can take me places I didn't think I could go. And so those are the types of moments that get me out of bed in the morning.
That sounds incredibly gratifying to know that, all the work you're doing, day to day in the background is translating to these like huge personal outcomes for people. I imagine that just must, as you said, it gets you out of bed in the morning. And I also definitely want to hear, just looking down at my notes here. So we've talked about what Guild is doing. At the top of this event, we said that Guild is like unlocking opportunity through workforce education. I wonder if there's another big social problem or economic issue that you would really like to see another entrepreneur get out there and tackle.
Oh, that's a fun question. Yeah. For me, I'm always thinking about those, and I spend all my time on Guild, but I'm always hoping other entrepreneurs tackle some of the other issues we're seeing. I think the care of our children is one I'd be remiss to not mention right now. There are lots of great social entrepreneurs thinking about childcare, supporting years 0 to 5. We're building a bit of a lab at Guild. We're building our own preschool so that we can think more dynamically and then share the best practices. And we have an amazing executive director, Julia Shepard, who is a childcare expert and has been running amazing schools in Denver for many years, who's going to lead that. And we're hoping to share those best practices with other companies. So she's one of the folks that comes to mind. I also think about the behavioral health needs of the world right now, and how are those going to be solved, especially given what we're seeing happen right now in a period of isolation and loneliness and increased mental health challenges for folks of all ages. And then I think this one needs to be solved on the nonprofit side, but the foster care system sure needs a hard look too.
Well, those are definitely very broad and thorny problems, but hugely important to address, just as you said. And I do think it's absolutely fantastic that you and your team at Guild are focusing on a piece of this childcare issue. That just sounds like such an important step in the right direction. To zoom out or zoom in, depending on how you think of it, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the reskilling world and the reskilling landscape. I know some people call it upskilling, retraining. I would love to hear where you see that going in the next 5, maybe 10 years, and then also how you see Guild specifically fitting into that, the evolution of reskilling.
Sure. I think reskilling is an economic imperative. I think when you look at the workforce revolutions of the last 1,000 years, it really simply, we used to have workforce transformation that spanned generations, right? If the grandfather had a set of agrarian skills, his son or the next son had a chance to learn the set of industrial skills, and then the grandson had a shot if they had accumulated enough wealth at learning the knowledge economy skills. That isn't the path we're on anymore. Folks are going to have to reskill within their career. It will not be intergenerational. And I think the pronouns obviously have also changed tremendously, where the needs are as significant, if not more so, for women than for men, given the displacement of the jobs we're seeing now. If 2009 disproportionately impacted men in the recession, we're now seeing a disproportionate impact on roles held by women. And so I think reskilling is going to happen now within her career, right? It's not going to be her daughter who serves in another type of industry. It's going to be the woman herself. And we've not built necessarily, though we're working on it, a system that brings higher ed and the corporate communities and the business communities together that recognizes you're going to have to do those two things at the same time. You're going to have to work and learn concurrently, as opposed to a world where we, went to school for 4 years and worked for 40 and called it a day. And so that's the most important change. Is I think we need a systemic recognition about the duality of doing those two things together. And we need to really think about what the role is of the public sector. I think that needs to increase, what the role is of the private sector, which obviously we're seeing tremendous innovation, and then how to change supports and expectations within the private lives of our citizens in their homes so that they can make it work to work and learn at the same time while still raising a family and having a high quality of life.
That's fabulous. And it sounds like Guild is sort of helping not only raise awareness of this issue that people will need to reskill within their careers as opposed to intergenerationally, but Guild is also taking action. It's giving more companies and more workers themselves the tools to actually do this successfully.
We hope so. That's what we're up for. And you know, the one beauty of working on a problem as big as this one is we're doing it with, you know, hundreds of other organizations. This is a problem that really we need lots and lots of entrepreneurs and companies tackling. And we're thrilled that our model is set up in a partnership-like structure where we get to work with the best partners in the country that are working alongside on this problem.
That does sound very sensible, to work in conjunction with other companies. In the time we have remaining, Rachel, is there anything really important you want to leave us with today about Guild or about your experience as an entrepreneur?
No, I guess that last piece would just be that I hope other folks continue to focus on this problem. I think the pandemic has only increased the awareness of the challenges of our higher ed system. And, you know, obviously, we could talk for days about the problems that are happening with the on-campus experience and the 18 to 22-year-old college experience, but that is still today an experience that less than 27% of our college goers even experience. And we've got, you know, 64 million Americans who've never gone to college nor will ever step foot on a campus. So we've got two sets of huge problems to work on. What is the campus experience, which I'm sure will get discussed heavily throughout this week with the summit, but then also what is the experience for our folks who are going to have a different path to higher education and reskilling, who are going to do it after the age of 22 and who are going to have to integrate it into their full adult lives. And so I'm always excited and hope I get to meet more folks this week who are tackling those challenges and who we can partner with.
Well, what an ambitious and just beautiful mission. And thank you for sort of articulating those problems for us so that those of us listening and watching today can sort of go and noodle on those things and think about how we can contribute to the solution. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me today. And everyone else, thank you for tuning in.